The physical universe does not exist independently of the minds measuring it. According to the observer-dependent theory of everything, the act of observation isn't passive. It actively shapes the resulting configuration of reality. This participatory model builds on early suspicions of quantum mechanics pioneers, who recognized observer and observed are linked in a single mathematical system. When thousands or millions of individuals share a highly coherent set of expectations, their collective observation carries enormous weight. They effectively lock the surrounding quantum field into a stable, agreed-upon reality. But a mechanical problem arises when two massive, equally convinced populations occupy the exact same spatial environment while demanding entirely different outcomes. This is not a metaphor for political polarization. In this framework, two incompatible configurations attempting to actualize in a shared physical space creates a literal structural friction. Upon contact, even with perfect internal unity, global coherence drops instantly to 0.5. The system enters a configuration struggle. Both groups now fight to collapse quantum probability into their own distinct reality simultaneously. Living inside this state of friction requires immense cognitive and physical energy. Observers face a constant stream of mutual refutations, grinding against evidence that contradicts their locked expectations. This perpetual ideological warfare feels like a permanent condition to those inside it, but the underlying mathematics prove otherwise. Endless struggle is structurally impossible. A shared universe simply cannot maintain 50% global coherence indefinitely. The conflict acts as a volatile phase transition, and eventually the system's own physics will force an exit. The specific way a conflict resolves is determined by two hidden parameters: the volume of physical and informational contact between the groups and the relative inertia of their beliefs. If interaction drops to absolute zero, the shared space tears. The timeline branches, neatly splitting into completely isolated multiverses, where each group evolves alone. But in a globally connected society sharing a single planetary cluster, zero interaction is a mathematical fiction. This exit route is closed. The second exit requires a slight imbalance. If one configuration holds higher collective belief or superior numbers, a positive feedback loop activates. The heavier reality systematically overwrites the weaker one. This path ends the friction and restores global coherence, but it does so through pure domination, erasing the opposing observer's world entirely. The most dangerous scenario emerges when opposing forces are perfectly matched. The asymmetry is zero, neither side yields, and the destructive friction refuses to stop. This line graph maps the trajectory of contextual belief during a prolonged stalemate. As the two sides constantly invalidate each other, confidence in both realities decays exponentially in a cascading chain reaction. The moment this reality viability index drops below the critical threshold, the deterioration becomes irreversible. Entropic death takes hold of the system. With collective belief flatlining at zero, neither configuration survives. The shared reality splinters into an unstable void of microscopic states, effectively ceasing to exist as a coherent structure. Once a universe reaches this state of collapse, it cannot be rebuilt from the inside. It requires an entirely new observer from the outside to inject a viable probability back into the system. Fighting a perfectly matched war to the bitter end doesn't validate either side's worldview. It mathematically guarantees the total erasure of existence for both. There is a fourth condition, one that resolves the friction without requiring the destruction of a population or the death of the environment. To understand it, we have to look at the strange loop. Each warring group is trapped in their own self-consistent cycle. They observe an outcome, it confirms their bias, and that belief dictates the next observation. Both loops are flawless, but completely incompatible. Synthesis is not a compromise between these 2 points. It requires the discovery of a completely new coordinate in configuration space, a third point that is mathematically closer to both groups than they are to each other. Locating this coordinate demands a meta-observer, an investigator who can step entirely outside the original conflict's dimensional limits to project a fresh configuration. Transitioning to this third point yields an emergent reality that unites the populations of both warring sides. Because it gathers the maximum number of conscious minds into a single belief, it becomes exponentially more stable than the originals. The options presented by the phase diagram are rigid. Splitting is impossible on a connected planet. Absorption is cultural erasure. Collapse is structural death. Synthesis is the only mathematical exit that creates a future. Two irreconcilable populations occupying the same space don't have to tear the physical fabric apart. By stepping outside the war for dominance, we can engineer the specific coordinates required for a shared, emergent reality.